us off here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Resilient Careers, Explore Your Future in Health and Biotech. I'm Jewel Clark, and I will be your room host today. The chat has been disabled, so we are encouraging you to use the Q&A button. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen in the control bar. That's where you can ask questions during the session, and we will do our best to answer all questions. And today we have a Spanish speaker, so feel free to ask your questions in either English or Spanish for our presentation today. Attendees can answer and upvote each other's questions. If you see a question that you like, you can upvote it with a thumbs up icon, and that question will get sorted upwards, and then we can prioritize answering that question. If you're a whole class, feel free to submit as many questions as come up from all of your students who are there in the room. And now I would like to present you with our team. Today we have Ana Paez Garcia, Joshua Von Trapp, and Madison from the Salk Institute. So Madison, take it away.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you so much to the San Diego County Office of Education for hosting this wonderful event today. We are so excited to join you for this wonderful event. So before we dive in too deeply to our presenter and a little bit more about the Salk and the Salk research on the Harnessing Plants Initiative as we celebrate this wonderful Earth Day, I want to tell you a little bit more about the Salk Institute in general, and then share some programs that we have for high school students in case that you're interested in a career in science. So the Salk Institute Salk is not an acronym. It's named after Dr. Jonas Salk, and you may have heard his name recently in the news as he was a key player in another public health crisis in the 1940s and 50s, and that was the polio epidemic. And Dr. Salk developed the first safe and effective polio vaccine to help combat that pandemic, and it was declared a success in 1955. He then went on to have another one of his dreams come to reality, and that was to create an institute where scientists could come together and do life-changing science. So some of the areas of research that the Salk focuses on include neuroscience and neurological disorders like autism and Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, lots of interesting things about the brain. We also look at aging and regenerative medicine, the immune system, including COVID-19 research taking place in the labs. We also look at metabolism and diabetes and cancer biology. We are one of very few cancer institutes that's actually not attached to a hospital. So another area of study, so these might all make sense while they're all life-changing science, but something that really pops out is we have one of the most world-famous and world-renowned plant biology departments. And so right now we have a quick poll question for the audience that we're going to launch, and we want to know why you think it's important to study plants. What reasons would you choose? So we'll have Jules, she'll launch that poll for us just in a second. Now for these, you can choose multiple options. You don't have to choose just one. So the options include, they can be used to make medicines. That might become kind of intuitive why it's important at Salk. We have a lot of other areas of research involving disease. They serve as the base of our food chain. So even if you eat animals products, the animal products will most likely eat plants. So that's really important. They provide many products like paper, wood, and cotton. We use them every day to accomplish tasks. It's a great technology. They can be used to fight climate change. They provide key structures in many habitats for wildlife. They produce oxygen and store carbon as oxygen-breathing organisms. That's probably pretty important to us. And they produce their own energy through photosynthesis. So take 30 seconds, decide which ones that you would be most interested in studying in the labs. So I know our scientist today will talk a little bit about her research, which relates to a couple of these, but the Salk Institute is great. What's really cool is a lot of our scientists actually work together. So you can't really just put our scientists in one box. So sometimes our plant biology department will discover something really interesting about plants that also might apply to animals. For example, recently, one of our scientists that studies Venus flytraps got published and had some information about movement in general that can apply not only to plants, but also to animals. So take your last 5 seconds. All right, we can end our poll. All right. Awesome. So they can be used to make medicines. It looks like a lot of us think that that's a really important feature. That's absolutely true. Some medicines that are used to treat cancer, even aspirin, came from plants. I do see as the second place that they can be used to fight climate change. As we celebrate Earth Day, I know that this is something that's on a lot of students' minds. So thank you so much for participating. And yes, plants are really cool. At the end of the day, that's what I wanted to say. So Salk's motto is where cures begin. So as a foundational research, this is really important to us. And you might be wondering, how can I, as a high school student, get involved in this kind of research? So we do have a program for high school students called the High-Toff-Brody High School Summer Scholars Program. This is an 8-week paid internship that takes place each and every summer. It's an opportunity to work side by side with Salk scientists and conduct real-life research. We also have some other supplemental programming and professional development that students get to do to be exposed to all different types of science, both industry type level science and then also other programs and what it looks like to study science in college. So the application window for this summer has closed, but each and every January, you'll have a link to the application along with more program information on our website. And these are just some pictures of our former interns. This is all pre-COVID time, so you'll notice they're not wearing masks. This year, we're going to be in a hybrid program. We also have a virtual program. So if maybe you're not quite sure if a full-time high school internship is for you, the virtual program is a part-time or even less than part-time professional development opportunity where you're going to build skills to be successful in future STEM internships or academic settings. And a lot of the program elements actually came from our High-Toff-Brody Summer Scholars Program. And that includes reading a journal article, analyzing data, preparing a scientific presentation, and virtual labs for techniques that you might experience. What's really cool about this program is the final capstone project is based on a topic of your choice, and their subjects really vary all over the place. So you can actually explore your own passions, and we're not kind of forcing you to explore something that we think is cool. You get to explore your own interests. More information about this program can be found on our website each and every January. So I just gave you a lot of information, and you might have generated a couple questions about these programs. Hopefully they excited you. So I wanted to share our contact information, and it's a pretty easy email address. It's just education@salk.edu, or our website, which is salk.edu/education. And we'll definitely post those for you after the fact. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team, or as Jewel had mentioned, feel free to type those into the Q&A and we can respond to those questions as well. We're so grateful to have you here with us in one of our favorite events, and that's a SciChat at Salk. So the SciChat at Salk is an opportunity to hear a little bit about research from one of our incredible scientists. But what's really awesome about this event is it's really guided by your questions. So we're going to start with a presentation from the wonderful Dr. Ana Paez Garcia, and then we'll follow it up with Q&A. And as Jewel had mentioned, you're welcome to ask questions in Spanish or in English, and you're going to do that by typing into the Q&A feature. Feel free to ask questions related to the topic and the research, or maybe just about a question about what it's like to pursue a career in science. We're so excited to welcome our presenter today. Please welcome to the virtual event, Ana Paez Garcia. Ana, take it away.
Thank you, Madison, and thank you, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so today I'm going to tell you how we are trying to build super plants at Salk. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, because you may think that scientists, we are all vocation, and we wanted to be scientists since the day we were born. And that's not true. Sometimes life takes you a path, and is the path that you happen to like, and you follow it. So in my case, I am from Spain. Spain is this tiny country in Europe. For Europe standards, is not that tiny, but for American, US standards is very small. So I was born in Madrid, is in the center of the country, is one of the small number of cities in Spain that doesn't have coast. Is a shame, because everything is surrounded by coast. and is the capital of the country. So I studied, I was born there, I studied there, and I start my work in the lab in there. I like it when I was studying in high school. The subjects that I was more interested in, depending on the teacher, more than in my skills or anything. So I happen to have very great science, biology mainly teachers since the very beginning, since I was little. So I wanted to study more about genetics. And at that time in Madrid, we didn't have a degree in genetics or something like that. So I decided to start biology, to study biology. I studied in my bachelor degree in the University of Alcalá de Henares in Madrid. This one here on your left is a super old university. The origin of these buildings are in the 1499 year. So it's one of the most the oldest universities in Europe, and it had a lot of people have studied there. It was a very nice place to study. And then I started my PhD in another university in Madrid, the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. That one is more, it's newest. It's not, it doesn't have these super nice buildings as the other one. So there, attached to the university, to the Autónoma University in Madrid, you can do your lab work during the PhD in different labs. I worked in the Spanish National Center of Biotechnology in the group of Antonio Leiva, this smiley guy here. He's super fun. And this is the moment that I started studying roots. He has a lot of interest in studying how roots uptake nutrients, and in some cases molecules that are poisonous for the plants from the soil and keep them inside the plant. So in my case, I study the spatial configuration of the root, that is also called root architecture. Is the shape that the root acquires naturally growing in the soil. So from Madrid, I took a flight and I landed in US for the very first time in Oklahoma, but not in Oklahoma, in a town in the middle of Oklahoma that is called Armour. It was a shock because Madrid is a big city and Armour is, it had more cows than people at the time. But there is a super cool research institute that is called, it was called Nobel Foundation, now it's called Nobel Research Institute. And I started my postdoc in the lab of Ellison Blancaflor, this guy here. He is awesome. He is the best mentor that someone can have. So he taught me more about how to study roots under the microscope at a cellular level. And we also did a bunch of field studies. So from here, from Oklahoma, I traveled to San Diego, is where I am now. I'm working in the lab of Wolfgang Busch here. This is our boss, and this is the nice group that I am working with, and participating in the harnessing plant initiative. Okay, so what do? I already told you that I study roots. So I look at plants from a different angle. Most people look at plants, even me at the beginning, we look at plants from the above ground because they have flowers, they are green, they are nice. But I look at them like this, from underneath, with a lot of love, because I love roots. They are so cool. And I know that this talk is not a lot interactive, but I am pretty sure that if I ask you, why do you think that roots are so important? you all will tell me because they are the ones that explore the soil. Okay, so they have different tasks. The roots are very important because they support the plant, they support the above ground part growing, like anchoring the plant to the soil. They explore the soil around the plant to get the water and the nutrients, because plants are organisms that are called sessile. I don't know if I said that word very well, but they cannot move. They cannot go to the fridge or to the supermarket like we can, or they cannot go hunt or harvest vegetables like other animals. So they need to access to the resources that they have around them, okay? And in my particular opinion, the roots are so cool. They can have many different shapes and lengths, and that they are so awesome to study. So there are different types of roots. The main two types are ones where you can find long root, like here, is called the primary or principal root, and then that root develop lateral roots. Okay, this is the simplest one. Is very common in a lot of plants that we are familiar with, like for example soybean or alfalfa. But there are other type of roots that are very complicated. So for example, this is a picture of a wheat plant that I extracted from the soil and washed. And they have different roots. They have embryonic roots, is what we call the roots that they develop directly from the seed. I removed the seed to take this picture, but the seed should be here. So all these roots are formed from the seed, but there are other roots that they form from shoot tissue. Okay, these are the leaves, and then the roots are formed from the base of the leaves. So that's very weird, because normally roots are formed from other roots or from the seed. So I am very interested in how plants are so plastic to be able to develop so many different roots, because when a plant has this root system, it can explore the soil in many different ways. These roots can explore the surface, these roots can grow deeper, while this type of plant is more simple. Okay, the soil around the plant that it can explore is smaller. So I am very interested in knowing why plants, depending on the environment, produce more roots, less roots, deeper roots, shorter roots, etc. So how do I study roots? There are many different ways of study roots, of course, and plants in general. Sometimes we study them in the lab, growing in these tiny plates or agar plates. But then the knowledge that we get from studying them in the lab is very useful to take to the field and to understand how plants will grow in the field. And sometimes what we learn in the field, we bring it to the lab. Okay, so in my case, I have been very lucky in my career, and I have been able to study all this cycle. Sometimes it's hard because I like working in the lab more than in the field. I am not a field person. I am not a country person. I don't like bugs. And when you are in the field and everything is flying around you or crawling close to you, it's like, ah! But it's very interesting to see how plants grow in the natural environment. So, for example, one of the techniques that I use in the lab is I look at the plants under the microscope, and it's very important to know how the plants work inside, how the cells work, the cellular biology work, because, for example, in the case of the skeleton of the plants, this skeleton is very important for how plants and roots grow. The same as in humans, we have a skeleton that drives all our movements and allow us to grow to be taller, to be shorter, to move in one or other direction. Okay, so the skeleton in plants doesn't look like that. it looks more like this. It's like a network of fibers or filaments, okay? This is very active. So the fibers move all the time. They elongate, they shrink, they move in any way. So here what you are seeing is I am looking inside one cell, and I label these filaments with the green fluorescent protein that becomes from a jellyfish. They found it in a jellyfish that grow super deep in the ocean. So they extracted that protein that is fluorescent, and I attach it to the filaments of the cytoskeleton. So now when I look under the microscope to these cells, I can see how these filaments are forming, moving, or shrinking. And it's a technique that everybody uses in cellular biology. The guy that discovered the green fluorescent protein was like my hero. So why cytoskeleton, for example? Why is so important to know what is happening inside plant cells? Because in this case, the skeleton shape the cell. It helps the cell to grow round in all directions. It helps the cell to elongate, and when the cells elongate and grow properly, the root in this video here, you can see how the root is growing towards the gravity, deep into the soil. So this is what happens normally. The root has grows towards gravity, deep into the soil. Okay, so the skeleton helps the root to do these movements. And more importantly, when you change the direction of the growth, if you take a root and instead of allowing the root to grow deeper into the soil, you change that direction and put the root to grow horizontally like this, the plant knows where the gravity, where the soil is, and bends the root towards the gravity again. So the plant can grow, the root can grow deep into the soil to get the nutrient and water that it needs. So that's very important. So in case, for example, studying plants that are defective in the skeleton, we can uncover more and more about how that skeleton is important for growth. For example, here in the panel number 1, this is the regular plant. This is what we call wild type. Is how this plant grow normally. And all these 3 plants are what we call mutants. This mutant cannot grow the root deeper. This mutant has impaired the skeleton. So the plant, the root doesn't know where the downward direction is. So it's growing here and it decides that this is not the right direction and it bends, and then no, that one is not the right direction either, and it bends again. So it's kind of crazy. The root doesn't know what to do. And in the case of this mutant, the lateral roots don't know where the downward, where the gravity direction is pulling them, like in this plant here, and they grow straight. So, for example, that's very important. It's very important to have a good skeleton in order to explore the soil very well. And that's one of the things that you can study inside the cells, okay? There are other traits, we call traits or characteristics that you can study. For example, these are all different variants of wheat, and some of them produce a lot of roots and deeper roots. Some others produce very little roots and they are not very deep. These are 2 varieties of another plant that is called Arabidopsis thaliana. That is what we use in the lab because it's very easy to grow. And for example, this variety here, Columbia, is originally from US, and it has a very big root system. It's adapted to an environment here in US that allows them to produce a lot of roots and grow very well. And however, this one, Landsberg, is originally from Portugal, and in the environment that the plant is growing is not good for them to produce a very big root system. So they produce shorter roots. So this is the, in the case of the previous slide, you guys can see how natural varieties, those are not mutants or GMOs that we produce in the lab. Those are plants that are adapted to different environments, and they decided to produce different root systems because it's convenient for them in the environment that they are growing. So that's one of the knowledge that we can get in the lab looking at the roots, and then we can take that knowledge and study the plants growing in the field. Because in the field, it's not that easy to see the roots, okay? So that's what I did during my postdoc. This is the group of people from my lab, including my boss, Ellison, going to the lab, to the field to do some root studies. We were looking very weird, apparently, because the cows were looking at us like, what are you guys doing here? And they were right. It was not our natural environment. But we learned how to plant the seeds, how to harvest material for our studies, etc. And it was fun. We extracted a bunch of roots. Well, then after excavating them, I needed to wash them. And although I am super happy here, that was not that fun, but it's a lot of work, but it's very worthy, because then you can see how different stage of development grow different roots, and how plants that are adapted to different environments can produce deep and massive roots like these ones here on the right, or shorter and less branchy roots. So that's why I told you that normally what we try to do, even if we do fundamental research in the lab, is very, very translational to the field, and vice versa. So what are we doing at Salk? How do we want to build super plants? Okay, regular plants, as I told you before, use their roots to get the water and the nutrients from the soil, okay? But the shoot or the above ground tissue of the plant do what is called photosynthesis, that you all are familiar with that for sure. So the plants, one of the process of the photosynthesis that is very interesting is that plants uptake CO2 from the atmosphere, and they use it for producing energy, so they can transform all the nutrients into food. And they put back in the atmosphere O2, which is very good for us because we breathe that. So that what happened with that CO2? Normally it is processed by the plant and is stored somehow in the roots, because in the roots it happens an interchange of CO2 for nitrogen with the soil. So the plant expels CO2 to the soil and uptake nitrogen. And at the end, when the plant dies, the CO2 stays here in the soil, in the roots, and eventually it goes to the atmosphere again. What we want to do is to build plants that uptake more CO2 or the same amount of CO2. They are pretty efficient doing that yet, actually, without any modification. But we want to build plants that keep the CO2 longer in the roots, more CO2 deeper in the soil and for longer, okay? The deeper the CO2 goes into the soil, the less likely is for that CO2 to come back to the atmosphere. And what are our objectives? How do we want to make these super plants or ideal plants? We want them to produce bigger roots, deeper roots, and roots that bind more carbon. Okay, one of the molecules that the plants use to keep carbon in the roots is called suberin. Is kind of the molecule that forms the cork, okay, from the trees. But we want that to be a storage in the roots in the form of sugar. So my role in the project is here in the objective number 1. I am looking for ways to produce plants with bigger roots. And how do I do that? I study the plants' natural variability. So the plants, the varieties of the same species that grows in nature. And I grow them in these media plates to see how their roots grow. I also grow them in these pots or cones that these ones, for example, in this system, I use something that is called turfase that is very easy to remove from the roots. So then we can grow them till they are adult plants, and then we can wash the roots very easily, and we can study how, if the roots are bigger or smaller. So I will have plenty of root types, as I show you, for example, in this slide, and I will be more interested in root types like, for example, number 5, number 7, number 1. Okay. Another thing that we do instead of on top of studying natural variation, we are trying to make mutants or GMOs that produce more roots without producing less shoots. Because a plant, like a human being, has a specific amount of energy that they can use every day. So if a plant has to spend a lot of energy in producing roots, normally they arrest the growth of the leaves. And we don't want that. We want more roots, but also a healthy above ground tissue, because if not, the plant will die eventually. So, for example, here on the right, I show you these 2 plants, and this one is what we call wild type, the plant without modification. And on the right, you have a plant which one gene has been mutated. And then this plant, the effect of that mutation is that this plant produces bigger roots and bigger shoots. And this is what we are looking for. So yeah, as a summary, I want to leave you with this image on how we are trying to build these super plants, getting to know the genes that make the plants produce bigger roots, deeper roots, and roots that bind a lot of carbon in them. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. Ask me a lot of questions, please. I think that I am on time.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Anna, for leading us through that presentation, sharing us a little bit about the Harnessing Plants initiative that we have here at the Salk Institute. And there really is a whole world that's happening underground that we're just barely tapping into. They're tapping into it all the time, and now we're trying to get clued into it. Thanks so much for sharing. We've got a couple of questions that have already been submitted to the chat, so we'll go right to those. If you have a question that pops up, please feel free to type that in English or Spanish. I've got one of each right now. So let's start off with this first one, asking, what did you have to do during high school to become a scientist? What classes did you take? What internships, extracurriculars, clubs, activities? Everyone's always worried, what do I got to do to make myself seen? So yeah, what was your pathway? And do you have any advice, maybe a difference from growing up in another country and then seeing it here in the United States?
Yeah, okay. Spain is very different from US in that sense. In Spain, we don't have a lot of extracurricular activities or opportunities as you have here. For example, like in Salk, like Madison and Joshua told you before, you have the opportunity, even since high school, you can go, and it's very frequent here, not only in Salk. You can go to a lab and you can talk to the PI or to some postdoc in a lab and tell them, I want to know how to work in a lab. Can you give me an internship? Or I can do something to work in summer. In Spain, that's not easy. It's not easy and it's not frequent. So in my case, I didn't do anything but studying. When I finished high school and I start college, then you have a little bit more opportunities because you can volunteer a little bit in the labs of the university, but it's not that easy either. It's like when you decide to do your PhD, is when you have the opportunity to join a lab, to do full-time work there, and even get paid for that. So in your case, you have the opportunity to do it. Do it, just do it. Even though if you try, even though imagine that you think, I want to study cancer, you go to a lab, and if you have the opportunity to enter in a lab where they are studying cancer, just do it, of course. But if not, just go to the closest lab that they may be studying roots like me. And at least you have that opportunity. And then if you don't like it, you don't like it, it's okay. But at least, yeah, try, because it's like another summer job that you can do, and you can get, I mean, even lab work gets tedious and repetitive. And it's not like we are every day like, oh my God, I discovered the super cool gene. No, sometimes it's boring. But if you have, you have the opportunities. So I guess that you can use that opportunity. And then there are grants maybe that you can explore to do that in another country. I mean, US is so big and you have good opportunities that maybe you don't want to go abroad. But if you have the opportunity, go and see how they do science in another country, because it's very mind-opening.
I was just going to ask, as somebody who has traveled and moved for a job, is that normal for a scientist? Should I kind of have that perspective of, oh, I might transplant myself, or I could be in a city with a huge biotech industry? So is that like a normal interaction where scientists may pick up their whole life and move to another country to pursue that work? And is it normal for a scientist to maybe try a lab and realize, oh, this isn't the direction I'm pulled, but while here, I found out that I really love this, or I got connected with this opportunity? Is that a normal series of events that somebody might have as a scientist?
Yes, I think that almost all of us, well, there are people that they have a clear vocation, okay? But as almost all the biologists that I know, they maybe wanted to do something else, and then they started biology because it's very general, and they can move later to veterinary, to pharmacies, or to medical schools or whatever. But a lot of people end up in research because, like me, we are very curious and we are asking all the time questions. So why don't we try to answer our own questions? That's very useful. And also following, here in US, you have more opportunities to, you don't need a PhD. In Spain, if you want to end up working in a lab like I do full time, your path takes you to do a PhD. It's also public education is very big in Spain. I don't needed money to get my bachelor. I mean, my parents work and my parents could support me, but I didn't need to pay a lot. All the universities, almost all of them, are public. So that's a big deal because everybody has access to that without spending a bunch of money. And normally, if you get to the PhD, you always have scholarships and grants. I didn't need to pay anything, and I was paid also. So it's very easy for us to get to that point. Later, the career establishment is not very good. So that's why we need to go abroad. And I think, from my point of view, that is necessary for a scientist to go out of at least of the place where you have learned how to do science, even in the same country, because US is so big that you are going to find a lot of difference from Oklahoma to San Diego, for example, in the way that they do science and in everything else. But in Europe, for me, it's very important because of the language. Because of, I mean, you can see much, the cultural shock and the cultural diversity that I find in international labs, I wouldn't find it in my country. While I did my PhD, I didn't need to, of course, you need to be gentle and you need to treat people very well and everything, but the way that we have in Spain to talk to each other, it can be rude here in US, for example. So you need to learn those things, that you don't talk to people screaming, or we are very noisy, we are very loud in Spain, and sometimes it's not the way to go. So all those things, the language, the cultural diversity, is something that I wouldn't miss if I would have the opportunity.
A full, well-rounded experience. Awesome. I'm going to pass
Thank
over to Monica,
you.
who's got some questions.
Yes, we have 2 questions in Spanish, so I'll read them in Spanish, Anna, and then I'll also translate them. And one is tied into the travel question that Joshua asked. ¿Has tenido oportunidad de viajar a estudiar plantas de otras regiones? And that translates into, have you had the opportunity to travel to other countries to study plants in other regions?
Okay, I am going to answer first in Spanish.
Perfecto.
Sí, aparte de aquí, en Estados Unidos, en Inglaterra también, pero lo bueno de las plantas, sobre todo de la planta Arabidopsis que nosotros estudiamos, es que puedes pedir las semillas, puedes comprar las semillas de plantas que crecen en todo el mundo, porque hay una colección muy grande. Entonces las compramos y entonces las estudiamos. No necesitamos ir allí a recogerlas. Pero, o sea, cada vez que voy a un sitio nuevo, yo me maravillo con las plantas que hay. O sea, aquí en San Diego hay plantas muy raras. Okay, I will answer in English. So yes, I had the opportunity to see other plants in other countries, but the good thing about our job and the plant that we study in the lab, Arabidopsis, is that the resources worldwide are huge. So there is a collection of seeds from all over the country. Some people do that in their free time. They go hiking and they find, oh, this is an Arabidopsis, let's take one. And then they grow them in the lab. And then we have plants from Swedish, Japan, Spain, all over the Mediterranean, US. So the collection is huge, and you can buy those seeds.
Thank you. And this is just my follow-up question, and I'll ask the other question too. Any particular, and I hate to put you on the spot, has any particular plant from another region like wowed you, like really impressed you? And from what country?
Like plants in general, or the one that we study?
Oh, plants in general.
Okay. Well, I am impressed here how big they grow the bougainvilleas. I don't know how you call them like that in English?
I think so, yeah.
In Spain, it's so difficult. It's only in some of the southern places that are very close to Africa, but here they grow everywhere. It's like, and beautiful and huge, and yeah. And those other plants that they have like how do you call them in English? The flower is like, it has like a sharp thing like that, the devil
like
plant.
a trumpet, I don't know.
They are like bushes, and they have like nosotros las llamamos las flores del paraíso or something like that.
Oh, yes.
Well, they are super weird. They are like bushes, and then the flower has something like that.
Birds of paradise. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Joel. Yes, totally. The other question, thank you so much, Ana. The other question in Spanish is, hola, Ana, ¿puedes explicar, por favor, cómo es un típico día en el laboratorio? And it translates to, hi, Ana, can you please explain a typical day in the lab or laboratory?
Okay, I'm going to do it in English because it will be, you have to, I mean, always English is shorter. In Spain, we use too much words. Which is good, but okay. So right now, what I am doing, I have a list of genes that I am interested in to see if I truncate those genes or modify them or mutate them, I produce some phenotype. What we call phenotype is some root system that is different. So I am mutating genes, and then I am trying to see if those mutations produce huge roots. So for that, what I do is I grow the plants in soil. So for example, one day I arrive to the lab and then I harvest tiny leaves from each of those mutants. And then I extract DNA, which sounds super cool, but it's a very easy protocol. You just grind the tissue and then you apply different liquids, and then you get your DNA clean after a lot of washes with a lot of alcohol. And then there is a process that you all know because of COVID, is super trendy now. We perform PCRs all the time. So what we do is that we choose one gene in the middle of the whole genome of the plant, and then we make thousands of copies of that gene. And then I run that PCR, I put it in a gel that is like a gelatin, and I apply current, and then I see the DNA in there. Because what I am trying to decide if that is that if those plants are wild type, the regular type, or are mutants. So I see if that gene, if that specific gene is very big, it will be a mutant. If it's very short, it will be a wild type, for example. And I see those differences in size. Or if it's a mutant, that gene won't appear, will disappear. But if it's a wild type, I will see the gene there. So that helps me decide if one plant is a mutant or is not mutant, and then I will go with the mutants only. So then I will allow those plants to grow till they have seeds. So some other days I go to the lab to harvest those seeds, and then I start the process again. I take those seeds, I grow those seeds in those transparent plates that I showed you in vertical to see the root system. I extract the DNA. So that's pretty much. Then you have a lot. I mean, working in a lab, in a molecular biology lab, is like working in the kitchen. You have a protocol. There are times that you have the things in the oven and you need to wait. So then I read, I check my email, I prepare my experiments.
That's so cool. So it's a lot of waiting.
Yeah, mixing.
Yeah.
And waiting. Mixing. And
You can't hurry the environment. It has
No.
to take its own time. I love how you talk about mutants. It reminds me of X-Men and all of the Marvel movies. Thank you for answering those questions. Over to you, Joshua.
Thank you very much. And we've got about 5-ish more minutes. We can take your questions, so feel free to submit those. We can try to get as many as we can asked. Another great one that came in, kind of stepping back from science, maybe imagining before you were in a lab, did you have any other jobs before you became a scientist? And I'm going to ask a second one off this one. If you had to pick a new career tomorrow morning, what would you go and do?
Okay, the first question, yes, I have done everything. Well, everything, no, but I have worked in many jobs. I have worked, as I told you before, it's not very easy to get these cool internships in Spain. So what I did when I was during my bachelor, I was a summer camp counselor, because I loved summer camps when I was little, and the counselors, they have so much fun that I decided to do it. So it was super fun. Then I worked, for example, in Spain, we have these indoor playgrounds where we celebrate birthdays and where the kids celebrate birthdays. So I was, I guess that you call it counselor also there, organizing the kids' activities and everything. I have worked in the Burger King. I have worked, before I started my PhD, I got a job that I never get to do because they offer me my PhD and I prefer to do that. But I was gonna enroll in a super big ship that they fish. So they take biologists with them. So you know that when they fish, like in open waters, in deep sea, they use these super huge nets to catch what they want, but they catch a bunch of other stuff that they discard. But there are biologists counting the number of species and the number of fishes per species that they discard. So I was gonna do that. It's good that I didn't, because I don't know if I can be in a ship for 8 months without going to actual Earth. But that was cool. And I also work in helping small companies establishing quality and environmental laws. So they have plans to follow the laws in environmental, how they discard their residues or something like that. And about a career, I happen to be doing what I like the most, and I have tried a bunch of stuff. I also have teach and everything, but when I am working in the lab, there are not Mondays. There are not, when I go on vacation, I love going vacation, I disconnect a lot, but the day that I need to come back to work, I don't care. It's not a drama or anything. So, and that's why I continue doing this, because it's not that they pay a lot. But if I think that I would like to study cancer, because, but it's also research. So I don't know, maybe being a teacher. Yeah, I think that, that will be cool.
I'd say based on all those well-rounded experiences, that's just some great advice to kind of take whatever opportunity comes, it's placed in front of you, seek those chances, and you never know how that's going to build you into the character of a person to kind of lead a lab and to conduct research. Awesome. All right, got just a couple more minutes left, so I think I could probably have time for one more question. This is kind of like a zoomed out perspective of all your learning as a scientist. Is there anything that you've learned in the lab, whether you're your direct research or something that you've interacted with, where it's changed the way you've lived your life because of how powerful that fact of science is?
Well, I think that you mean that something that I have learned that has changed the way I see life, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I am very strict with myself. I am very demanding with myself. My expectations for myself are always very high. But I have learned that in science, normally nothing works. And that's the whole point of that, to try hypotheses, to fail, and then to redirect your hypothesis, and then to finally, maybe after a life of research, finding something that it is the truth. But it's never the truth, because when you have a theory, I mean, and it's your work, I am very, I mean, you need to support it, and you are gonna defend that and say that that's what is happening. But then someone else come and someone demonstrate you that that's not the only option. It's like, it could be one option, or maybe you are wrong. So that's kind of changing the way that I think about life in general, that I think that something, it needs to be this way, but then some people come from very different environments, and they show me how in their life that's not a truth, that is very different. So my truth and my circumstances are not the only ones, and it's good to be wrong from time to time, because you learn. And So I guess that's changing environment in science, that everything changed all the time. And yeah, because at the beginning when I was studying my bachelor, I was very interested in human evolution, but it's like every time that they discover a skeleton, they say that it's a new species. And it's like, well, if you take my skeleton in hundreds of millions of years from now, and you take a skeleton from someone from Philippines, maybe that they are sometimes they are shorter, and it can be like a whole different species, and we are the same species. So it's like, yeah, for me it was like, how you can be so sure that that's a species, and how you can be so stubborn. But yeah, in science, you cannot be like that. You cannot be stubborn because someone is going to prove you wrong.
Yeah, you got to be able to accept failure and learn from that and move from that, and then look at the team around you and go, wow, I have a whole room of people who can help support me through this and give me their feedback and their insights, and we can grow and accomplish this together. I always like to say, you can't have a sports team full of quarterbacks or a band full of lead singers. You got to have everybody that's going to make that winning game happen, or that beautiful song. And that's kind of what science is. We're okay to be wrong sometimes, because we've got a team around us that's going to help get us through. Awesome.
I found my experience in US, most of the people in US, you are educated to don't like to be wrong. That's because you are educated strong to believe in yourselves, that you can do everything. And it's true, you can do everything, but listen to the others, and their power and their skills is very useful. Sometimes it's better to believe in yourself, but to be open that other ways of doing things are very, very good also.
I think those are great words to leave everybody in this audience on, that everyone who is listening and hopefully is taking these words internally and thinking about their future. Monica, you had some information to pass along for all of us before we wrap up?
Yes, before we wrap up and Joshua and Madison close the event, and Anna, of course, I wanted to share the evaluation link for this session. I'm putting it in the chat right now. And then we also have a certificate of participation for students. If you need to show it to your teacher that you were in the session, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to take a screenshot or take a selfie or take a picture. There's so many options now for you to go ahead and show this to your teachers or your counselors or whoever invited you to this event. Give it a couple of more seconds and I'll stop my share so Joshua and Madison can close the event. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Muy interesante.
Thank you very much. It has been very fun. And you, at the end of my presentation, you have my email. So if you have more questions, feel free to email me.
Thank you so much, Anna, for your wonderful presentation, for sharing with us a little bit about your career trajectory and what it's like to pursue science, and also to pursue a career that helps us lead to a resilient Earth, to help make changes to our environment. For students, thank you. I see your question. We will put Anna, could you put up your last slide again one more time so the students could see your contact information?
Yes.
We are so grateful for all the students and teachers that joined us today. Thank you so much for Jewel for hosting, and Monica for helping to facilitate, and for Joshua for helping be our moderator for our Q&A. We're so excited to be here with you all today, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Take a moment to celebrate the Earth and to be grateful, and also, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. So thank you all so very much, and we look forward to connecting again sometime soon. Bye, everybody.